Okay guys, so welcome back to the channel. On today's video we're going to talk about dopamine maxing. Maxing out your dopamine and why you need to do this if you want to optimize your testosterone. So really this video is all about the relationship between dopamine and testosterone. One thing I always emphasize is how, we think about all these singular pillars, variables, mechanisms when it comes to our health, but really they're all just part of the big pool that is us, our biology, our health. All of these things play off one another to some degree or another. But when it comes to dopamine and testosterone, these two, well, one is a neurotransmitter, one's a hormone. We'll quickly go into that. But, these two things are really more linked, I think, than people really give them credit for. So we're going to go into that connection, explain it in a little bit of detail, not too much, but then we're really going to go into just a few protocols that you can do to simultaneously dopamine and testosterone max, protocols that really feed both of them in pretty direct ways. So let's go straight into it. What is dopamine? As I said, dopamine is a neurotransmitter, and some people like to call it the motivation molecule. Some people like to call it the reward molecule. It is crucial for motivation, reward, of course, focus in the pursuit of those. It's responsible for a number of things, but those three are kind of, good ones to define it by. What is testosterone? Testosterone is, of course, a steroid hormone of the androgen family, and it is essential for basically everything that makes us men. Everything from fertility and overall sexual development to anabolism, building muscle, and then things such as cognition, mood, things that we maybe don't associate testosterone with as much, but it really has a holistic effect on our health as men. It's responsible for so many things. And testosterone and dopamine are tightly linked by something called the neuroendocrine axis. And that's a fancy term which just basically means there's a communication network between our brain, the rest of our nervous system, and the endocrine system. This just basically means that our brain, our nervous system, send signals to all of our hormone secreting glands, the pituitary gland, the thyroid, in order to produce everything from testosterone, thyroid hormone, growth hormone, every single hormone. It is they're producing what they are because of signals sent to their glands from the brain, from the nervous system as a whole, and then the endocrine system will send signals back to the brain, to the nervous system. So let's go into the actual connections on a practical level between dopamine and testosterone. Number one, we have what we could define as the key connection, and that is dopamine actually regulates the signals sent from the brain, the hypothalamus and midbrain in particular, to the endocrine system, which controls hormone production such as testosterone. So this just basically means that dopamine actually plays a key role in regulating the signals sent from the brain to the testes in order to produce testosterone. So if our dopamine's flatlined, if we've completely trashed it because of, doom scrolling and the rest of it, then that signal is not going to be firing in the manner, in the way, with the efficiency and effectiveness that it needs to in order for us to have optimal testosterone production. And I think that's a really key thing to think about, something that can really hit home for all of us when it comes to how we treat our dopamine levels. But it is a bidirectional feedback mechanism. So testosterone itself also modulates dopamine pathways. It increases levels of dopamine transporters and receptors in the brain's nigrostriatal and mesolimbic regions. In turn, higher dopamine activity increases motivation, drive, and can stimulate gonadotropin releasing hormone, which is upstream of testosterone synthesis. So without that jargon in the way, just try and think about the fact, what does it mean to be in a high testosterone state? You've got loads of energy, loads of clarity. You're able to make quick, decisive decisions. You're able to push through and do hard things. What happens when we've got the energy to be able to, and resilience to push through and do hard things? We're going to get immense dopamine releases from that. So when we're in a place of high testosterone, we have the ability to get really healthy, really good dopamine releases through the activities that we do each day. Flip it on its head. If our dopamine's firing in the way that we need to, we're going to feel really good about expending effort, doing hard things such as training sessions, such as research, whatever our day job is. We're going to be able to push through and do what we know is the right thing for us to do. And when that applies to things such as being dialed in on nutrition, being dialed in on sleep optimization, being dialed in on our training, that is going to lead to us building high amounts of testosterone. So when you're in a really good place with your dopamine release, your dopamine levels, that downstream is going to make you do things that in turn build your testosterone, and vice versa. When we're doing things that build our testosterone, that's going to feed into us doing things that are going to give us really healthy dopamine releases. And number 3, a bit more of an indirect one, but still incredibly pertinent. They impact one another through the stress HPA axis. So the HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, this is responsible for reducing stress hormones like cortisol. So when dopamine's high, this axis reduces cortisol. And we know testosterone and cortisol have this inverse relationship. So when cortisol's lower, this really sets the stage for optimal testosterone production, a state of high libido, a state of high recovery. And I think a great way to envisage yourself is think about yourself having what I would like to call big cat energy. So lions, we think about these guys as the kings of the animal kingdom. They go out, they hunt, they're ferocious, they get what they want. What are they doing when they're not doing that? They're chilling, they're sleeping. And this guy, he's got no qualms about the fact that he's taking a nap in the middle of the day. He's feeling no guilt about recovering, about relaxing. He's done what he needed to do. He's conquered whatever it is he needed to conquer. And now he's chilling out so he can go and do it again. And we really need to get into that mindset if we're going to have optimal testosterone, if we're going to optimize our testosterone. We can't be in this state where we're constantly expending, when we're in this chronically stressed out state. And when your dopamine's firing properly, it's going to be easy to do that. You're going to expend that effort. You're going to feel the reward from having done so. So then the cortisol comes down. You've got this environment where you can enter parasympathetic states, upregulate recovery, and that's just going to set the stage for peak testosterone production. It is also important to note that dopamine can also increase testosterone by suppressing prolactin. So as testosterone and cortisol sit on this inverse relationship seesaw, so do dopamine and prolactin. When dopamine's high, prolactin's low. If prolactin's high, dopamine is going to be low. So when we have elevated prolactin, this suppresses gonadotropin releasing hormone, which lowers LH, FSH, lowers testosterone and fertility. So it's all of these things cascade downwards. We don't want high prolactin. Obviously, we want a certain amount of it. It does serve functions that are necessary. But if you had to get rid of one hormone as a man, it's going to be prolactin. So we really do not want prolactin any higher than necessary. And having healthy dopamine levels, healthy dopamine releases at regulation is really going to ensure that. So let's go into some tools to both dopamine and testosterone max simultaneously, protocols that really support both of them in very direct ways. First of all, this is my favorite because it's not just a singular protocol. It's not, a particular food, a particular supplement, a particular way of training. This really is a lifestyle practice to implement. Novelty. So novelty, of course, boosts dopamine. The best way to think about this is we are traditionally nomadic beings. Traditionally, we're always moving around, entering new environments. This fed our dopamine. Our dopamine circuitry is wired to constantly be fed a certain amount of novelty. And today, when we're settled, we go to the same job each day. Our days look very similar, and people get in these cycles of depression and boredom, I believe, because of a lack of novelty in their lives. And obviously, we can't just all be nomadic. Not all of us have the abilities to just fly out to Dubai or Bali or wherever we want to tomorrow. But there are so many ways you can invoke novelty in your life. New set of clothes, meet new people, go to a new coffee shop to work today, go to a new park for your evening walk, whatever it is. Keep invoking novelty in your life. This is going to keep your dopamine fed and satisfied in a different kind of way. And when you're entering these new environments, especially competitive environments, this heightens all of our hormones, well, not all of our hormones, but it heightens hormones, yes, such as cortisol and adrenaline potentially, but also testosterone as well. When you're in a new environment, again, traditionally, we'd be looking at this new environment, as what potential resources can we hunt and gather? What potential, other men are we going to have to compete with for mates? What new mates are there? We're going to be assessing this new environment. Our hormones are going to be heightened as a result of that. And that's something, again, that we lose today when we're, around the same people in the same safe, familiar environment. So by putting ourselves in novel environments, we're going to boost dopamine, but we're also going to boost testosterone as well, as we put ourselves in that competitive state to assert social status in this new environment. Number 2, cold exposure. So again, we all know this boosts all of your catecholamines, dopamine, cortisol, adrenaline. That's why it wakes us up in such a great way in the morning. But it also enhances stress resilience, which is really important, in my opinion, for testosterone optimization. A massive reason why testosterone is in the gutter for so many of us in this day and age is because, again, the safety of the modern world has led to an inability for the modern day man to deal with stress, deal with very minor stressors. So when we put ourselves in what really is a life-threatening situation, you stay in that cold water too long, you're going to very quickly become hypothermic. When we put ourselves in that situation, our heart rate skyrockets. It goes straight through the ceiling. Massive releases of adrenaline that we don't get in any other part of our day through anything else that we do. You breathe deeply through that. You learn how to control that. You learn that it's going to be okay. You build that psychological and physical resilience to that stress. And then you can apply that to other areas of your life. So throughout the course of the day, even though you had that big surge in stress, you overcame that, which allowed you to deal with all the other stresses in your life. So your stress overall is at a much lower level, which again sets the stage for high testosterone. And then number 3, tyrosine-rich foods. So tyrosine is the precursor amino acid for dopamine. Dopamine is made from tyrosine. That's just a simple way to think about it. What foods are rich in tyrosine? Animal proteins. What all the things that animal proteins provide us with, what's that going to do? It's also going to boost testosterone. And, that's something we can break it down to different variables. Foods to lower systemic inflammation, foods to give us energy, foods to optimize testosterone, optimize DHT, optimize libido, whatever it is. Okay, in those nuances, maybe there's some fruits and herbs you can take that are particularly going to be beneficial for libido, or particularly be beneficial for DHT, particularly be beneficial for immunity. But all around, we're pulling from the same pool of foods, the same healthy pool of foods, easily digestible carbs that do not create systemic inflammation, animal proteins that are rich not just in the amino acids that we need, but micronutrients as a whole, saturated fats to support hormone production. We're pulling from the same pool of foods. So again, if you want to support dopamine and testosterone, animal proteins are your best friends. They're not just going to provide you with the proteins, the amino acids that you need. They're going to provide you with all those essential micronutrients as well. All of your B vitamins, iron, copper, vitamin A, all of that. And yeah, plenty of tyrosine as well for your body to actually create dopamine in the same way that you need saturated fat, those animal fats, to create testosterone. That's kind of a good equivalent maybe to think about it. So they are the main 3, but here are some bonuses for you. As always, I like to emphasize lifestyle practices, protocols, the pillars of diet, sleep, and good training. But you can add supplements into the mix as well for that cherry on top of the cake, or to get things kick-started. As with everything in this video, this especially is not medical advice. Always consult with your doctor before you, experiment with megadosing any supplements that are mentioned here. But you can try experimenting with dopamine agonists. So these are compounds that are directly going to boost dopamine. So you've got synthetic ones such as lizaride. You've got natural ones such as mucuna pruriens. It's funny because mucuna pruriens, a lot of people can actually run into dependency issues or overstimulatory issues. Despite mucuna being natural and lizaride being synthetic, we tend to always think of synthetic equals less safe because it's man-made, whereas a herb, a plant, is from God's green earth, so it's much safer. But mucuna, because it actually contains active L-dopa, a direct precursor to dopamine, for a lot of people, it can be just too stimulating. So do be careful with mucuna. But these can be especially effective at lowering prolactin because they're directly boosting dopamine. You can also try supplementing with tyrosine. You can get that as an amino acid the same way you can buy creatine. Although obviously, it's always preferential to get this from whole foods. But if you really wanted to max out your tyrosine, you can supplement with it as well. Same thing applies for phenylalanine. That is another precursor amino acid to dopamine. And then you've got adaptogens such as rhodiola rosea. These are adaptogens that can just further boost dopamine. Again, when we see that boost in dopamine directly, we're going to see the lowering of prolactin, and that can be you can really feel that when your prolactin's lowered. You'll just see a spike in libido. You'll just feel a lot sharper, a lot more energized. Again, prolactin is one of those that even if it's elevated a little bit too high, people will really notice the difference when it's brought down to a lower level. So yeah, as I said, all of these, everything you do in life comes with risk. When you're experimenting with supplements, there's a certain amount of risk involved. That means some people, will tell you to steer clear from them, but no risk, no Porsche, no risk, no reward. Again, that's really an overarching principle that I'll keep hammering home to everybody. People will say, what are the side effects of this supplement? Or, I want to start jiu-jitsu or boxing or MMA, but I'm worried about this, and that. I could get hurt. You could get hurt walking down the street today. Life is inherently risky, and one of the riskiest things about life today is how safe it is. Because when we're in that safe environment, it shuts down growth for us in so many areas, and one of those areas really is our testosterone production. We need risk in our life. We need that risk to overcome. We need to learn how to manage that risk in order to become stronger individuals, stronger men, and to be the high testosterone man that we want to be. So yeah, there you go, guys. Tools to dopamine and testosterone max. I hope you learned something beneficial. If you did, give us a thumbs up on this video. Drop a comment below. Give us a subscribe as well, most importantly. And if you're ready to take the risk of undergoing a radical transformation where we can help you implement all of these protocols and more so you can optimize your testosterone in just 90 days, then drop me a DM on Instagram at Aaron Wagley Coaching. That is the best way to get in contact with me and explore what we could potentially do if we work together. So yeah, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Plenty more content coming, at least one of these videos each week to help you optimize your testosterone and attain peak health and performance as high performing men.